Oh, hello again, YouTube land. So, as you can see, I am recording from my desk again. My back is feeling a little bit better. Although I'm tired as hell, I gotta admit. Whew. I'll tell you, when you stop and think that this has been your best day all week, and the entirety of your day consists of housework and running errands, half of which means getting more cleaning supplies, you kind of have to stop and go, what the fuck happened to my life? Which for me is a double-edged thing because I have to admit I'm very June Cleaver-ish in that stereotype kind of way, appearance notwithstanding. And I did want to be a housewife, and I did want to be a mother, and I did want to be all of those kind of what feminists now call cliched societal expectations. But for some of us, it's possible to do that and not be a societal cliche. You know? I am not a June Cleaver body type. My hair is not blonde anymore. I intentionally make it something else. The antithesis of blonde, actually, even though I'm a natural blonde. I'm covered in tattoos, not as much as some people I've met, more than the majority I know. And I don't have kids yet, the kind with two legs. I mean, I've always had four-legged, babies. But this trails back to the recent conversation that Sam and I had about when he first met me. I was a lot more gung-ho. Not his phrasing, by the way. Gung-ho is a thing I say a lot. But, more focused, more determined, and a lot more follow-through. I mean, when he first met me, I'd only been back in New York about a year, and I was really focused on trying to make a situation for myself that was sustainable, that would let me stay in New York where I had so desperately wanted to be for so many years. And then I got in the situation with Liz, and then I ended up dating Sam, and then the situation with Liz progressed, and I ended up moving in with Sam, and, yada, yada, yada. Several years of living together, followed by engagement, followed by getting married. Now, a lot of people, I would think, would assume that if you just move in with someone and then marry that person, that it's an issue of convenience. Granted, the timetable involved here gives a lot more people pause because as much as I knew I wanted to marry Sam from early on in our relationship, I'll give him credit. He didn't rush into it. He didn't jump into the idea of being married. He, in fact, dragged his heels worse than a 2-ton block of cement. But in the long run, that probably has benefits I'm not willing to admit. So I'm trying to be more follow-through. And to that end, last week, I went on an interview for a position I applied for at the bookstore Sam works at, which I mentioned when I posted Monday morning. Now, here's the point where I take my last cigarette out of the pack and light it to start talking about this particular subject. Smoke! At least I'm drinking water. So, Monday. Excuse me. Now, one thing you gotta keep in mind about me is that I am one of those people who is a child of two places. My family is from New York. My younger sister and I were born in New York, in Westchester. My parents grew up in Westchester. Our parents, I should say. Grew up in Westchester. My sister and I both grew up in Maine. My sister didn't have the benefit of ever coming back to New York for a long, complicated series of reasons and explanations that I've gone into some in these posts. But I used to come back to Bronxville and visit my grandmother when she still lived there. Not far from where she was a school teacher for several decades. And we would go into the city, take the Metro North and come down into Manhattan and, go through Grand Central Station and the whole nine. But I grew up in Maine. So I'm not part of the tri-state necessarily, and I'm not born and raised New Englander. My personality tends towards my New York heritage. My experience leans towards the 20 formative years I spent living in Maine. So Monday afternoon, I'm home. I'm doing my Monday shtick, cleaning, figuring out what needs to get done for the week, catching up on whatever nonsense I've put off over the weekend because I had the time with Sam. And as you'd expect, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I'm just, futzing around with my iPod in front of my TV. And I start seeing these postings about reported explosions, and I'll admit I took a somewhat assumptive stance because when I skimmed past the tweets that said explosions and bombs, I noticed they were from official reports from like CNN and stuff, and my mind jumped to, well, it must be in the Middle East, it must be in Europe, it must be away from here.
What is the matter? I see you. Your belly is very cute.
Sorry, she's been doing this all week trying to cheer me up. I took that sad, assumptive American standpoint, and when I really stopped and read them, because there were becoming so many of them, I realized it was talking about at the Boston Marathon, which in the very back of my mind I knew was going on because it was a holiday, a day off from work in New England, Maine and Massachusetts specifically. So I knew my parents had the day off because my parents still live in Portland. But I had completely forgotten that it was marathon day. So I flipped to the CBS News and I stayed watching it until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And in the middle of all that, I was tweeting, I was calling people. When I first saw the thing on Twitter and switched to the CBS News, Scott Pelley was talking about, what had happened so far, and they had a producer on scene and blah, blah, blah. And I called my parents and I said, Dad, do you have the news on? And he went, no, we're watching a movie since we have the day off because it's Patriots Day. And I went, oh yeah. Flip to the news. There were just 2 explosions at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. And my dad went, holy shit, are you serious? I went, yeah, dude, you don't fuck around about bombings. So my parents flip to the news and they see what's going on. I get off the phone with him. I call Sam. Sam works in the basement office. They're not likely to have news on. So I call and I tell him because there are a lot of people at the bookstore who are athletic. They do marathons, they do bike runs for charity, they do triathlons, and I told him, spread the word. And in the middle of that, I was checking my email. Wondering how much toward the end of the day I was finally going to potentially hear back from the person I interviewed with, who told me that Monday would be the earliest I'd hear back. And 10-20 minutes, I think, before the first time the president got up and spoke about the situation, I got an email in my inbox saying, it was so great meeting you, I wish you all the best, but I've decided to go with a very qualified candidate who has this, that, and that experience. I wish you the best of luck. Which is polite, professional, dismissive, and overly detailed. Because a person who gets a rejection letter doesn't need to know why you went with someone else or how much more qualified someone else is. The only part the person getting the rejection is going to give two shits about is that they didn't get it. But me being me, I tried to be professional. I tried to be polite. I wrote back explaining I understand. I appreciate her getting back to me regardless. I hope the lucky person who got the position is everything that they hope for. And I'm somewhat disappointed, but I understand. Because that's how I do things. And then yesterday was the snapback, where I just really didn't want to go anywhere. And I was so upset about not getting the job, coupled with all the news about what was going on in Boston, that I came just this side of utterly gorging. I mean, utterly gorging. I was ready to order a large pizza, a lot of breadsticks, down a 2-liter soda, polish off the 4 donuts, 3 donuts? 3 donuts I got myself for breakfast that morning, because what the fuck do I care? And by the end of yesterday, having not ordered the pizza, mercifully, only having decimated the donuts, I turned enough of my thought pattern around that I went back out in the afternoon and got a couple more errands done, and went and, got some face wash I like, and the special toothpaste I use, and general bullshit. Picked up a few groceries because Sam wanted to try making carbonara for the first time ever last night, because it was his night to feed himself. Or one of them, anyway. And by today, I was a lot less close to the edge, but not 100%. And Sam tries to help. He tries to be encouraging and say, well, if you want, I'll go through Craigslist for you, because I know you don't like it. And he said to me, I wanted to make the carbonara because it's new and it looked interesting, and because I thought it would be something that you would like, and I could make dinner for both of us instead of just for myself. And I told him that's a really sweet thought, and I do like carbonara. I mean, it's a pretty unctuous mouthfeel of a dish that involves sauteed bacon, onion, and garlic. There's not a lot to hate about carbonara, unless you're vegetarian. But I'm trying to not have carbs in the evening and at night anymore, because it screws with me too bad. At that hour, I don't know if it's me, if it's because I had gastric bypass or what, but at that hour of the night, when I try to eat something that's got significant carbs in it, like things with rice or pasta, I have to be really careful, because it's very easy for me to get halfway into that dish and my whole body just goes, nope, everybody, back out the way you came in. You don't belong. So suffice to say, it's a very not pretty situation. I finally finished taking my vitamin D supplements last week, so I gotta get whole new blood labs done. Yay. Another 50 vials of blood they gotta draw for all the nutrition panels. I don't know. I'm trying to keep focused on longer term things. I'm trying to focus on my health and my diet and improving my weight and being in better physical shape to start a family. And I'm trying to let Sam's optimism have an effect on me, but I'm so naturally pessimistic. And you add to that the severity of the shit I grew up in, that would turn a person bitter, that would turn a person hard, that would turn a person that pessimistic. And you put those two things together, and it's just really not easy. It's really not easy to let someone that optimistic have any influence on anything. But at the end of the day, despite everything else, fights, nonsense, quirks, what have you, everything that Sam does, I understand as him trying to be helpful. And I understand on some level, at least, that he doesn't have a knack for wording things out loud. He is a good writer. I've read several of his things from college and since, and he is funny. I mean, if you ever see his Facebook posts, he can be pretty damn funny. But not if you ask him to express that verbally. He just doesn't have the capacity. I'm the talky type. He's not. And if you've ever met my husband in person, you know what I'm talking about. He smiles, he's friendly, he looks at you when you have a conversation, but it's a very one-sided conversation because he has a huge issue with social awkwardness. And it takes a long time for him to warm up to people. So I'm glad I was patient enough for that process. But to be fair, I'm sure I rushed it a bit because I don't really put up with a lot from a lot of people. I really have to give a whole fuck of a lot of concern for me to put up with most people's bullshit. For me to actually let you get away with stuff, oh dear God. I mean, I don't even know what that would take. There are plenty of things I don't let my husband get away with, and I know people I'm actually related to by blood, I give even less credence to get away with nonsense. So it hasn't been the best week so far for me. And it is tragic and upsetting when things like domestic terrorism happen. And I remember living in Maine when 9/11 happened, and my best friend, Liz, was living in the city. She grew up here. And I probably spent most of that day trying to get her on the phone. And couldn't. And I spent the whole day in a panic. And then she finally called me and she went, "No, I understand. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you or worry you. But, I was on the phone with my mom. I was on the phone with my dad. I was on the phone with so many different family members." And I was like, "No, it's okay. I'm just glad you called me at some point before the day was out, Come to find later on Facebook that it turns out one of Sam's cousins and his family lives in Boston now, 3 blocks from where it happened. Nobody was hurt. Him and his wife and their baby were home. They left at lunch because the baby needed to take his afternoon nap. But I didn't even know. Like, in my head, I knew he was a professor, and I could have sworn he worked at UC Berkeley, but at some point in the recent past, I missed the family memo about them moving to Boston, and I guess he works at Cambridge now. So, everyone knows someone. But obviously I've been talking for a lot longer than I usually do, and I apologize. I am, in the back of my mind, working on making these more concise and less rambly, but I think in this one particular instance, it's a forgivable sin. So I will talk to you guys next time. Hopefully your week's been better.